Welcome to the Cosmic Business Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Pallas, and this podcast is for soulful entrepreneurs who want to harness the cosmic power of astrology to elevate their message, unlock flow, and attract their best clients ever. Join me every week and get excited to discover how you can use the energy of the cosmos to get the business breakthrough you've been waiting for. Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. I'm so excited to have today's guest with us today. Kristy Gray is an astrologer and life strategist from the Gold Coast, so we are practically neighbours. Her career started in learning and development in the beauty industry, working for the likes of Clinique and global beauty giant Sephora. A passion for developing people and brands blossomed into a 10-year career, but Kristy was perpetually curious about astrology. She was that girl in the office who was always asking everyone for their star signs, which I totally relate to. And in 2018, she found herself sitting in front of an award-winning astrologer who became her mentor and instantly fell in love with the stars and how they can help you understand more about yourself to make conscious decisions. She's now been doing this for more than 4 years, and she's become one of Australia's leading astrologers. You've probably seen her featured in places like Body and Soul. You'll see her columns in all of the best places. And through her signature formula, Astro Strategy, Kristy combines mystical insights with practical tools to dismantle the uncertainty that's been holding you back. And I love that when you're not stargazing, you're at the beach, fantasy novel and green juice in hand. I totally relate to that also. Love a good fantasy novel and a green juice. We are like Astro sisters. And I absolutely love that you are here on the Gold Coast and that we can jam on what's happening this year, what's been going on astrologically this year, because it has been one of those kind of topsy-turvy kind of years for most people. But what are we going to be looking at for the rest of the year? And what are kind of the themes that we're going to be seeing, I guess, not just the rest of this year, but potentially for the next few years as we navigate this whole new structure that we're being given thanks to some big breakdowns in what we had expected for a long time before 2020. So before we get stuck into the full-on forecast, I would love it, Kristy, if you could tell us more about how you use astrology in your business, how you first came to this realization that astrology was your business, and then how you use it on a day-to-day level. Before we were just chatting about how you really work with your transit. So I'd love to know a bit more about that.
Oh, well, firstly, thank you so much for the amazing introduction, Sophia. I feel very blessed just sitting here. And if you'd asked me even what my relationship was like with astrology, maybe even like the first year or second year into my journey, there would have been like a lot of imposter syndrome and there would have been some hesitation there. And I think it's really important for me to highlight that because when you were reading out like a little bit about me, that sounds all incredible and it's full of confidence, but I wasn't always like that. And my relationship with astrology has been something that I've fallen in love with. Like I'm definitely low-key obsessed, but it wasn't always like that. And that was because I think I maybe doubted my capabilities in the beginning. And the reason why is, so I'm a Virgo sun and I have Mercury in Virgo and I also have Venus in Virgo. And, that's some really big placements. And so Virgo, for anybody listening, it's an archetype that really represents natural born healer and teacher. It can be quite black and white, very perfectionist. And so if a Virgo doesn't understand something, they can sometimes discount it or they'll bypass it completely until they can understand the thing. And I think that's what I was like with astrology is I think that we get so enamored by the stars that we want to understand everything at once. And you actually can't do that with astrology. And so that's where that hesitation came from. But I was always obsessed with astrology and spirituality and space. I have my Aries moon in the 8th house. So I came into the world asking the big questions. Why are we here? What is our purpose? In my corporate career, I spent 10 years in learning and development. However, I kept coming to this place in my life where I'd ask myself, is this it? And I was lacking fulfillment and joy, and I kept ignoring the warning signs from the universe. And I had some big lessons with the planet Saturn. And so I found astrology through my own search for meaning. And I had studied a few different things like fitness, nutrition, crystal healing. It was one day, it was actually a psychic I saw who said, I don't think you're done studying. And she gave me like a book on chakras, and that led me down to the path of crystal healing. But she was also the first person that introduced me to astrology because she had an ephemeris. And one day I remember sitting there and I was like, I just Googled, I was like, I wonder if I could study astrology. And I'll never forget, it was the first time when I sat in front of my first astrology mentor and I was seen for the first time, because she was able to give me insights into my natal chart, and that I not only have 3 planets in Virgo, I'm really fiery. I've got so much fire in my natal chart. I'm passionate, I'm optimistic, and my fire placements are really like, they're so strong. And for the first time, I realized that I'm more than one part of me, meaning I'm multifaceted and I can be more than one person. I'm multi-passionate. And I felt so seen in that moment. And so I suppose the reason I wanted to kind of start there is that that's my goal with everybody, is that you don't have to fit in one box with astrology. It's not a belief system. It's a language. It's a language to understand yourself and the world around you. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people to understand themselves and find confirmation in astrology. It should be a tool for self-empowerment. And so I fell in love with the stars. I continue to become so obsessed every day. And so how I work with astrology is, it started as a tool for self-exploration, and that's still what I come back to time and time again, whether we're wanting to explore relationships, career, purpose, emotions, challenges, like you name it. But what I also love doing is understanding astrological season you're in and the energy you're experiencing, because that helps you to make sense of the cycle that you're in and focus on the things to get the biggest bang for your buck. So Virgo. But it really is about, how can I maximize my time and energy to make the most out of my life, stay in my lane, and that helps to eliminate comparison and feel more confident in the direction that you're going in life.
That is so awesome. And I love that you use it for confirmation. I was having a chat with another guest recently, and we were talking about how there's a big difference between looking to something for validation compared with looking to something for affirmation or confirmation. And I think it's just so beautiful that that's how you work with astrology. It's like, yes, I already know this within myself. Finally, I'm being seen for it. And now I know how to work with it. It's confirming that I know what I'm doing and just giving me that little bit of a nudge in the right direction to follow my energy instead of trying to fight it, which I think a lot of us do. We think we get, especially when we've been in corporate worlds for so long, we get in this mode of like, oh, but I should be like this, or I should do this, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing, instead of feeling into the who we really are and how we really naturally work best. And yeah, I love that you've had that experience and uncovered this multifaceted version of you. I guess it can be really difficult to notice those facets of ourselves until we have it in front of us on a screen or on paper, or somebody shows it to us in that way. So that's a beautiful initiation to astrology. And I think that's similar experience to what I had, and what I hear from a lot of people who come into it. It's like you have this reading and all of a sudden you feel seen for the first time, like properly seen. And that is such a magical experience. Let's have a look back this year. What do you feel has been the predominant energy that we've been experiencing since January, and why? And let's dive into that.
What energy are we not feeling right now is the big question.
Yes.
And then there's like another layer to that, which I'm sure we'll dive into. It's like what we're experiencing now also has a tie to the past and is also a part of what we're going to embark on from a future perspective too. And so, I think that's a really important piece to highlight with astrology is that nothing's singular. It's always a part of a greater whole. And so even with certain themes, whether you're tracking, new moon cycles, full moon cycles, it might be your ruler, it might retrograde, and that's what you track. If you're interested in astrology, is that there's always a part of a greater whole. And so I think where my attention has been directed is the nodes, and the nodes when they shifted into the Taurus-Scorpio axis in January, and also to that they'll stay in those positions for the next 18 months. And I think one thing that I really learned over the last 2 years, especially because my business blew up in COVID. So 2020 was the year that I found that everybody was searching for meaning and they were coming to me for astrology. But what I found happened is that with the tricky, challenging aspects from 2020, it was forcing us to go inwards and look at what needed to change in our lives. And then I think what happened is I noticed with clients is everyone kind of stepped into 2021. They were like, oh my goodness, new year, new me. And then it didn't change. And then I think that everyone kind of like tried to push, like it's like trying to push a boulder up a hill. It's like, if I just keep pushing, it's going to change. And I'm like, well, it's not. And then we moved into this year, which is a real new normal year. But with the Taurus-Scorpio axis, it's all about leaning on your inner resources. And inner resources, in my opinion, are your skills, your talents, how you emotionally regulate yourself, what's your level of resilience like. And that's actually really hard to do because I think we're seeing it online now as well. I'm sorry, little tangent, but we've got so much Aquarius energy and then we've got all this Taurus energy. So everybody wants to have an opinion and be like, we need to make this change. But I think we've forgotten it's so important that if we can make the change within ourselves, that creates a ripple effect collectively. And that's what the nodes teach us, but we have to start with ourselves.
Yes. Okay. So let's just back up a little bit. I love this. Just to describe the nodes are not planetary bodies. They're mathematical points in the sky and they're calculated from the moon's orbit. So the way we think about the nodes, the north node and the south node is, and I think about this from a Vedic and a traditional astrology perspective as well, where the north node is considered to be like the head of the dragon. So it's this thing that we are hungry for all the time, where we've got this insatiable appetite for it. And the south node is the tail of the dragon, the releasing end, where everything kind of comes out basically. So now, since January, the nodes of the moon have shifted into the zodiac signs of Taurus, and the north node shifted into Taurus. The south node is now in Scorpio. So with the north node in Taurus, that means we're moving towards, or we're hungry for, more of this physical or material sense of things. So we've noticed, I suppose, even just in 2022, this insatiable desire for property. For instance, like the property market has just gone nuts, and it was already starting to go nuts last year, but like this insatiable need for material security, which is a very Taurus type theme, Taurus being the sign that is focused on the physical senses, the money and food and the pleasures of the earth and the senses. So we're very much in this space now of being hungry for more of that. And because maybe we see it like, oh, well, the borders, everything's opened up now, so we can't get enough of like going to restaurants. Like there's this real like sense of like, let's enjoy the food. Let's enjoy like the things that we couldn't enjoy before. There's this real like desire for all of that stuff, but also this sense of needing security, needing money, needing property, needing to like ground down into the material plane. Whereas that Scorpio tail of the dragon is all about what are our psychological issues, really, that we are either trying to discover, trying to work through, or trying to let go. Like think of the psychological baggage that we're trying to leave behind. Is that how you see it as well? I'd love to know, you've got this beautiful explanation of of what this axis is all about. So I'd love to dive a little bit more into that with you.
Yeah, I love that. And, I think the thing is that with everything in astrology is that you have to take into consideration, like you're so right, it's both of the signs and the axis. Because if you look at one singularly, it can have very different meaning than when the two are combined. And if we think about, and I have a slightly different lens, I view South and North Node in, which I love. And this is the great thing about astrology. There are so many lenses you can view it in, and you can take your own meaning from it. When I think of like South Node, for me, that is like in a natal chart, that's past life influence. That's like your comfort zone. That's where you hang out the most, and it's like feels really cushy there. And if we were all working towards our North Node, which is really what we're here to work towards and strive towards, it would be easy, but life isn't easy. And so there's always a duality, but it's not about stepping into one and letting go of the other. It's like, how do you combine the high vibrational qualities of both? And so how I really view this South Node in Scorpio is all about how can you, focus on those inner resources, because Taurus, right, is all about material resources. But then like Scorpios is tied to other people's resources, especially like joint finances with money. But it also does have a very powerful, potent quality to it, which in a low vibrational state has a fear of letting go. It hangs on to something because it has an emotional attachment. Whereas, Taurus is all about the material world, but it's also about, like in a high vibrational state, it's about connecting to what's important and knowing what your values are. And like, the one thing I love about Taurus is that they are the only sign that has this ability to declare something to the universe and go after it and like manifest it. And so that's how I really view these two together. It's like, okay, how can you look at your shit, lean on it, deal with it, and then go, if I want to make my dreams a reality, like, how can I lean on myself to make that happen, rather than think of, oh my goodness, if I buy a lotto ticket, I'm going to live my best life. And so there's some, I suppose, radical responsibility that needs to take place. And I think that's a collective theme, that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure. I love that idea of, with all this Uranus in Taurus energy, this radicalization of those Taurus themes. So radical responsibility is a perfect way to put it. Taurus is a very responsible sign, I should know. And yeah, I just do think that there is this sense of, we have to get radical about the way we take responsibility for, as you said, what we value, and mastering more of ourselves, like our physical selves, but then also acknowledging that South Node and really like mastering our mental, our psychological selves, the way that we have managed money in the past. And has that been good for us collectively as well as individually? Do we place too much trust in other institutions, people that manage our money for us, bringing it back to that Scorpio theme? Do we place too much value on other people's opinions of us instead of what we truly want to be doing? And I've seen this playing out with a lot of clients and friends, people really coming into their own, like, no, I'm sick of doing that. Like, I'm not just doing that anymore to people please. I am now stepping into what I really value. And that's the beauty of that Taurus North Node, is like, okay, I'm ready to own and take radical responsibility for what I want to be doing, what I want to be manifesting in this lifetime. So that is great. But obviously this axis brings up a lot of shit. Like it brings up a lot of our stuff, particularly with that Scorpio South Node really activating us in those deep, dark places, because that's where Scorpio likes to go, right? And it is asking us to let go of the things that we've been holding on to, because that's what Scorpio likes to do, is like, hold on,
hang on
until
for
the
dear
very
life.
last moment. Yes. So like we were talking earlier before we started recording about the eclipse season. So obviously this is an important part of this North-South node axis, is it means that when the nodes change signs, we're going to experience the eclipses in those signs for the next year or so. So we've already experienced the South Node eclipse lunar eclipse in Scorpio, we're going to have a North Node lunar eclipse in Taurus. That's right. So we've got it coming up at the end of the year. We have a partial solar eclipse in Scorpio late October. So a solar eclipse is a new moon. And that one didn't look too bad to me, actually. That new moon or partial solar eclipse in Scorpio looks okay. The total lunar eclipse in Taurus, however, that looks a little intense. That is happening on the 8th or 9th of November, I think, depending on where you are in the world. And that one may be a little more firecrackery because it's going to be conjunct Uranus and opposite Mercury. So there's going to be a bit of like some maybe intense realizations or something dramatic might happen. But what we're noticing all year is that we've got this north-south axis, and then there are other things, other planets that are going to come along and activate it. So we have Uranus, the planet of change, disruption, radicalization, in Taurus as well, kind of shaking things up already. We've been experiencing this since 2018. And as a Taurus rising, I know this very well. This has come in and completely changed my life. But it's also really activating this Taurus North Node and Scorpio South Node because it's coming along and then just shaking it up. And we also, right now, pretty much as this goes live, are experiencing Mars coming along and activating that as well. So I would love, Kristy, if we could just talk a bit about how Mars, in addition to Uranus, comes along, because we've got the three of them all playing nicely together. What does this feel like when we've got the North Node, Uranus and Mars all hanging out together in Taurus?
Again, it depends on, what your activations are like personally, because I was only talking to Sophia about it before. And I know because you've got this Taurus ascendant, so you've already gone through so much change, and Taurus doesn't necessarily love change, whereas I embrace change.
Very uncomfortable.
And so my activations this year have actually been pretty kind considering, in comparison to the last couple of years. I'm not going to say I've gotten off lightly. And so, I think that also does impact how activations, how you feel about certain activations and how you seek meaning in them too. But with these three coming together, because Mars is the planet of action and how we assert ourselves, it's also representative of desire and our lust for life. And so it's a very masculine energy. And so when Mars is thrown in the mix, it intensifies things. I think it's really important to try to seek some form of balance. And I share that from my own perspective. So I have Mars and Leo in my natal chart, and it conjuncts my ascendant. It's in the first house. And so when people meet me, they normally think I'm a Leo because I'm quite out there, I would say, and you can probably tell by how I dress or how I'm put together, but I use my hands a lot when I'm, storytelling, and I've learned to really appreciate that with me, but it's a very intense sign. And so you have to kind of keep it in check because otherwise it can be too much for some people. And the same goes when it's forming any type of activation, because it is the ruler of Aries. And so with this combination together, which hasn't happened in the sign of Taurus at this particular degree since 324 BC, it's very amazing because, we're never going to experience this again in our lifetimes. And I think that is really going to be that hump in the mountain, if that makes sense. It's we're kind of climbing towards the peak of that mountain. And then when we get to this point on the 1st of August, it's going to be the peak. And it's up to you. What is the journey that you're going to take when you start to climb down the mountain? Are you going to take the easier route and start focusing on what you have control over versus what you can't? Or are you going to take the harder route that could be a whole lot longer, but you're going to end up in the same place anyway?
Yes. So we're going to be feeling this intense internal need for action, change, internal revolution, as you said. I love that. And some of us will take the slower road and some of us will be right there ready to smash it. Now, I think old me would have been in the, let me take the slow road. But I think and I think this might be the same for a lot of people with a Taurus rising or strong Taurus placements, because we have been literally shaken to our core for the past 3 years. So we're talking about Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And that's not just because of Uranus in Taurus, which is obviously there really shaking things up, but also because we have Saturn in Aquarius. So anybody with fixed signs is getting either a conjunction, opposition, or square, the three most difficult aspects from Saturn, and or a conjunction, opposition, or square from Uranus. So we're like, even with your Leo rising, you're still feeling that, or you were feeling that, because now, you know, Saturn and Uranus have moved on past that point for you because you're quite an early in Leo. But like for me, I'm right in the middle of Taurus. And, you know, I also have Saturn in Scorpio and Venus in Scorpio. And, you know,
all the fixed energy.
It's all just all that fixed energy, plus my midheaven in Aquarius and things like that. So it's just constantly getting hit. So I feel like for some of us with the fixed energy, normally, like I said earlier, we might take the slow road. But I think because we've had this real like, oh my God, what's going on? We've got to make all this change. This energy might actually give us a bit of a breakthrough in that sense. Like, it's like, okay, I can do this thing. I can do the next change, because we do like, you know, to plod along a little more slowly. So we've got that happening right now in August. We're going to feel that reverberating for a little longer. We also have this square with Saturn. So this 2021 was characterized by that really strong Saturn-Uranus square. So Saturn in Aquarius, early Aquarius, squaring off Uranus in early Taurus. And that very strong feeling of constriction, Saturn, versus, I guess, wanting to break free, wanting freedom with Uranus. So that was where we experienced this, you know, lockdowns everywhere, this real sense of being literally locked up or imprisoned and wanting to break free all the time and not being able to do the things that we wanted to do, but having this real internal sense of needing change. That characterized that 2021 energy. This year, we don't have that really tight square, but we're still having the after effects of that energy. And we also then have this activation because of the nodes into wanting more of the Taurus stuff, wanting to get out, wanting to experience the pleasures of life again. So it's bringing us out a little bit, but we are still in that bind between Saturn and Uranus. Is that what you've felt yourself and with your clients as well, Kristy? Is that really this kind of internal battle going on for people?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed with clients is that they come to me normally, and if I think specifically about my astro strategy clients, because I get to work with them over a longer period of time, is that they feel like they're on the precipice of something, but things are still outside of their control, and they're trying to help to take their power back in some way. And I love that, because to me, astrology is all about self-empowerment, and it's up to you what story you want to create. Because, you know, there's a high vibrational energy in a natal chart and a low vibrational energy, just like there is with every planet, zodiac sign and house. And so what I've really seen is that as soon as you give them the understanding, whether it's through the Saturn-Uranus square and how it's affected their chart, or the nodes, or whatever they're navigating, they can actually make sense of things, and then they start to feel inspired to start taking action on things that are in their control. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about it. I'm really lucky because I don't ever have anybody that comes to me and is like, hardly ever. Like, it would be like 2% where they're searching for the answers and they expect me to give them everything. Normally I find people are coming to me because they already have an understanding somewhat, not of necessarily astrology, but they know that something needs to change, or they might be feeling stuck in their current circumstances, but they're already ready to and open to receive some new insights to actually help them move forward. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I suppose I'm very influenced by my clients, and I think just because of the type of astrology work I do, I don't necessarily see the real, like, yes, sure, a lot of them are really frustrated sometimes, but they're way more empowered and they inspire me every single day.
Yes, I think that we have all gone through such intense circumstances, as well as this, intense internal energy as well, that it is really inspiring to see how much how resilient people are and how much they are dealing with, and yet, going on to still use that energy in really productive ways. So I love that about your clients. I love that about my clients too. It's something that's really exciting because it has been a really tough couple of years. And, we may be in this energy a little longer than we would like to be, but let's just talk about a couple of the good things then that have gone on this year and that we might be experiencing moving along for the rest of the year. We do have Jupiter. Everybody loves Jupiter. Everyone loves to talk about how great Jupiter is, and that's great. I love Jupiter. But as we know, as we have experienced, Jupiter can also, and just to explain, Jupiter being the planet associated with abundance and joy and the good things in life, but also associated with expansion, right? So how we expand, but also it can expand things that we don't necessarily want as well. So we can have more of stuff, and more can be good, and more can also be challenging. And Jupiter, we experienced Jupiter at the beginning of the year in lovely, juicy, flowy Pisces, which it loves to be in Pisces. It does rule, or traditionally it does rule Pisces. But we did experience this expansion of water because Pisces is the sign of water, associated with water. It's a water sign, but it's very much associated with this boundaryless, flowing nature. And we experienced a lot of rain here, especially in Australia. We really got that expansion of water, but also a bit of an expansion in potentially compassion and kindness and all the good things that go along with Pisces, a little bit more spirituality, mysticism, that sort of thing. And then Jupiter moved into Aries and we got this whole new energy, a very different sense of that Jupiter energy, and a big kind of push forward. I think particularly in business, it was a lovely push forward for people in business who had been feeling a little bit like maybe dreamy and in that space of visualizing their future, but not really able to take action yet. And Jupiter in Aries has allowed them to kind of get that fire back into them and move forward. So what's been your experience of Jupiter in Aries? And is this something like other aspects that we can look forward to later this year?
Yeah, I love that the astro twins, they really shared, I think it was like the beginning of the year, that this year was really split into two halves. And I felt that, like, when Jupiter's in Pisces, it's very much like, oh, I'm going to romanticize my life but not take any action. Whereas when it's been in Aries, it has been like go time. And I think the biggest thing with Jupiter is it's all about expansion, but sometimes it can just lack depth. and I think with Jupiter, and even if you're ever getting any like I've got a lot of Jupiter activations this year, but if you're anticipating a transit, you're not participating in your life. So I always think that Jupiter likes to meet you halfway. So whatever you decide to meet the universe with, Jupiter will always reward you. Might not happen instantly, but it will come. But it's like, what are you doing to take action on that? And so, if you think of how, because we've got Jupiter in Aries until October, it starts retrograding on the 29th of June. And I think that when it's in Aries, continue to take action on your dreams, actualize whatever you've been manifesting, thinking about. But when it's, going to start to move back into Pisces come October, is that will be a slowing down. I know that Sophia, you've been really tracking as well, like Mars retrograde towards the back end of the year too, which I'm sure you're going to touch on. But that will be a slowing down period. And so when you work with the energy, as you can start to use that to your advantage, and anything Jupiter related, I have to say, hand on heart too, I'm here for it as well. But it's okay, what are you actually doing to help make the most of the abundance that you deserve in this lifetime?
It's lovely to see those big Jupiter transits coming along in the chart, in other people's charts, in my own chart. I love it. But yeah, you really do have to work with that energy and not allow it to kind of overwhelm you. Yeah, don't just go buy a lotto ticket. You've actually got to work with that actual activation in your chart. So whether it's a lovely Jupiter-Venus aspect, you know, thinking about what action you're taking in your relationships. How are you moving things forward? How are you bringing more of what you value into your life, what you love, what brings you pleasure? You know, thinking about that rather than just going, oh, well, I'll get more love and more pleasure when Jupiter comes across my Venus. It's more like, yeah, how can you actually work with that? So yeah, I love that.
So for example, I had Jupiter and I knew I had Jupiter transiting my 7th house, and I'm single. I've been single for a really long time. And initially I didn't feel like dating and expending energy in that area. But what I did was I was like, okay, I want to make the most of this energy. So I hired a PR manager. It's the best thing I did because I was like, I want to expand my network. I want to build my relationships. And so this is how you can use it to your advantage. Like if you don't feel called to an area of your life, there's always something else you can take from a transit.
And it's important, like you say, to be able to see the nuances in the chart. So yes, you know, it might not be actually activating your romantic partnerships at all. It's actually activating your business partnerships or your business networks or your collaborations. And yeah, that's a beautiful kind of reframe other than going, oh, well, it didn't work. I just don't feel like activating my love life right now. But where can I activate, you know, that Jupiter energy? That's a beautiful way to look at it. Love it. And we are going to have some nice, probably during Leo season. So at the time that this goes live, we might be experiencing a bit of that Jupiter Venus and Jupiter Sun kind of aspects. I don't have the chart in front of me to know. When Venus is moving through like Leo later in the year, we may have that nice juicy Jupiter Venus trine energy with Jupiter in Aries, Venus in Leo, and that could feel really good. And also, yeah, just thinking about when you know your chart, you can think about, okay, where is Aries in my chart? What house does it fall in? What part of my life or business is being activated by this Jupiter energy? How can I drive it forward? For me, it's interesting because I have, obviously as a Taurus rising, Aries is my 12th house. So I have Jupiter in, you know, the house of hidden things. So it's a bit like, how can I use this energy? But it's really bringing me back to more of my spirituality, more of that 12th house stuff, more of, you know, digging deeper into, I guess, the psyche and all the things that are a bit hidden and that sort of thing as well. So there are lots of different ways this Jupiter and Aries energy might show up for you. And when you know your chart, you can work much better with it. We do need to talk about Mars. Mars is a tricky planet because I am a day chart. I was born in the daytime. So in traditional astrology, Mars is my out of sect malefic. And it happens to be the ruler of my house of relationships. So, you know, it's great. But Mars in general is this activating energy. It's giving us our drive. It's telling us how to take action. It's giving us our entrepreneurial spirit. And Mars is going to be sitting in the sign of Gemini for a very long time this year. So at the moment, we're still moving through Taurus, but very soon we're going to be seeing Mars shift into Gemini, Gemini being an earth sign and being the sign that's ruled by Mercury. It's very much about thinking, communicating, potentially networking, you know, really connecting with people and ideas. So what are you thinking that this Mars in Gemini for a long time is going to feel like for us, Kristy?
A long Mercury retrograde. But a little different, but kind of, yeah. I hate to say it.
Yes.
Yes. I think our Aries people will probably feel it the most because Mars is their ruler, and they're not used to that. Like they love being a pioneer in whatever they're doing in life, and you know when they're forced to slow down, that can bring up like frustration and aggression, and so I think it'll be really important if you've got like some really strong Aries placements in your chart, specifically with your ruler going retrograde, is that you've got an outlet for that energy because Mars is all about energy and And so if you don't have somewhere where it needs to go, that's when it can be exerted in negative ways. And in a positive way can be exercise. It can be, like putting your headphones in and blasting some epic music and like doing some, coloring in or something. It's just about how do you, process emotion and that energy associated with it. So it's going to be a slowing down period. And because it is in Gemini as well, is that does affect communication. So you've got like two really key things here, which is thoughts and actions. And how are you managing both?
Yeah. And there is this sense of, I think, with Mars going retrograde later in October, there is this sense of maybe we're going to feel a little scattered, or we're going to have this sense of like starting things but not being able to finish them, because our Mars energy, Mars is an initiating energy, right? It's not great at follow through. It's good in a sign like Capricorn where it can actually follow something through. So Mars loves to be in Capricorn. Mars in Gemini is more of this kind of scattered, I'll start a project here, I'll start a project there, I'll start a project here, as opposed to really getting things solidly moving along. What's your experience of people with Mars in Gemini, like in their chart?
You're 100% right. They've got like, they love being able to pick things up and put things down again. They love keeping up with all the news and everything. But that's also a really great place for inspiration too. And so it's like how I really will be wanting to work with this energy is like to actually follow those celestial breadcrumbs. So if I get any of those little hunches of like, oh, I think I need to follow this, or I need to go, down this path, I'm going to do that, because that's what really Mars and Gemini encourages us to do. When it's slowing down, like, and you too, like, and then this is another layer you can look at it based on your own natal chart is, you may be born during a Mars retrograde. So how this may show up for you is you'll feel like the world is finally caught up to your pace. So you're going to love this. Whereas the rest of us that aren't born in like a Mars in retrograde time as we are, we're going to feel that things aren't maybe coming to fruition as much as we'd like. And so again, that kind of brings me back to energy management of going, okay, how are you then expressing your frustration, or how are you expending your energy, and how can you maybe put some structures or systems in place? You got to remember I'm a Virgo, so I'm all about my foundation. It's like, how can you put some things in place before Mars goes retrograde, so that if you don't have the intellectual bandwidth you normally do, or you're finding it hard to pay attention to things, or you're wanting to fill your life with lots of different things to keep you busy, how can you still make sure that you're moving the needle forward in your life? And if you have those systems and processes in place, you can take that pressure off, or that expectation off yourself, because you can't always, like, you're not a machine, you can't always be forging ahead.
I love that idea of grabbing the inspiration and working on it when you can. That is such a Mars in Gemini thing. And then, just with the retrograde energy, just having to kind of sit back and go, okay, am I going to be able to follow through on this, or is this just an idea that I like? And I think there's got to be this sense of the Virgo, this sense of discernment when Mars is in Gemini of, does it have legs, or is it really just, just going to fly in and fly out tomorrow kind of thing? You've got to be a little bit more discerning in what you're working on. But at the same time, I think that this could be a good time to kind of really get some inspiration, like get fresh things coming through, and also go with the flow a little more, not feel so driven or plodding along in that Capricorn sense, or that Aries sense of Mars, which is like, I must move forward at all costs. This is more like that kind of, let's just have a play with this energy. Gemini has that playfulness about it. So, maybe people will feel a little bit more like trying things that they wouldn't try normally in their business. And maybe it is also a time where you've really got to give yourself extra time, extra implementation time, more than usual, because especially when Mars is retrograde, we just don't have that ability to kind of get things done the way that we normally do. Unless, of course, as you said, your Mars is naturally or natally retrograde. So this will be when you might get more things done than you usually do because the world is kind of caught up to your speed. I know I love Mercury retrograde. I was born during Mercury retrograde. So when it goes retrograde, I actually get a lot of things done. It's like, okay, I can do this now. And when it's not, when it's like in a very fast moving sign like Virgo or Gemini, when Mercury is there, I'm like, whoa, there's too much going on. I can't, I have Mercury in Capricorn, so it needs to be slow, percolated. But that's getting a little off topic. I think we did experience a Mars retrograde in 2020. So we experienced Mars retrograde in Aries for a very long time, or just Mars in Aries for a very long time in 2020. And that was incredibly frustrating. I mean, particularly for me with Mars in my 12th house. But I mean, it was like, because Mars could not take action in the way that it wanted to in Aries, we were all kind of in this bit of a stuck zone. Whereas this time with Mars in Gemini, Mars is already kind of a little bit different. It's already operating in a different way. So it might not feel as intensely frustrating as the Aries Mars retrograde was. What do you think about that? Like the comparison between those experiences, I guess.
Well, I think too, again, it kind of comes back to this being a part of a greater whole. And I think that that 2020 energy, just in general, we hadn't experienced that in our lifetimes. And so I think that just intensified things. And, we saw that, with some of the political things that were happening globally. And that again, it's when you're not exerting that energy into positive outlets, you can see that it takes form in aggression and anger. And so I think with this Mars in Gemini and also everything else that we've happening astrologically, this is really an opportune time to start paying attention to how you expend your energy. And are you expending energy in all the things that you want to be doing? And are there some areas in your life where you could potentially swap them out for something else? I actually just did a quick Google search as well. I know that these people don't have Mars and Gemini retrograde, but these celebrities actually have Mars and Gemini in their natal charts. So Martin Luther King was one of them, which I think is amazing. Chris Evans, who plays Captain America in all the Marvel movies. We've got Natalie Portman, Uma Thurman. And so, even though Sophia and I are talking about that, you might find it hard to, actually bring something to the forefront and get distracted. Sometimes distraction can be a really good thing. And some of the people I highlighted have done some amazing things in their career. It's just making sure that you have to trust yourself and lean into what am I trying to focus on right now, and feel inspired by what lights you up from the inside out.
Yeah, and that changeability as well is actually probably a really nice energy to throw into this very fixed year that we're having. That mutable energy of Gemini and Mars in Gemini will give us that ability to pivot, to change, to adapt that, we're not getting from the rest of the intense planets around. Particularly with, Saturn still sitting there in that very fixed energy of Aquarius. It's double-sided, as Gemini is, the duality of Gemini. It'll give you that sense of, great inspiration, ideas, and maybe adaptability. But on the other hand, it may leave you feeling scattered. It may leave you feeling, drawn in the wrong directions. So there's that aspect to balance within yourself. Where am I being drawn? Is this positive or negative for me? And also looking at your chart, where is this falling in your chart? What aspect of your life does Gemini rule? Or does Gemini, cover? And what does Mars cover? And how are those two things affected by this retrograde? So yeah, lots of interesting things coming up for the second half of the year. Before we wrap up, we're still going to experience Saturn in Aquarius for the rest of this year, and then 2023, it is going to move on. We are going to shift out of this very Saturn-y energy, because not only is Saturn in Aquarius, but Saturn also traditionally rules Aquarius. So it is like a double Saturn energy. Obviously, in modern astrology, Uranus rules Aquarius. So we have this continued battle of tradition versus rebellion or, freedom and modernization and change that Uranus and Aquarius represents. So how do you feel that we're going to play out this last part of Saturn in Aquarius? Currently Saturn is retrograde right now. We are going to go back over some issues that we've already experienced with Saturn in Aquarius. We are kind of cleaning up. This is like the almost final pass. This is the second pass through for a lot of us of this, late, these points in late Aquarius. And then we're going to have the final cleanup as it goes back in and towards Pisces. So how is this going to feel for this last push through Aquarius?
I just 100% agree with you. Like anytime there's a final activation, I call it a reconciliation activation. It's like, what do you need to reconcile in your life? And for some people that might feel like really challenging, and it might feel like they were wishing that the world will go back to the way that it was. For some people, they'll go, you know what, I'm ready for a fresh slate, and I want to wipe my hands clean, and I'm going to, peel back the layers of what I can do to, impact my life. And I think that for everyone, it depends on how you respond, how you've really responded to change over the last couple of years. Like in psychology, there's a model called the stages of change model. And, a lot of people sit in that pre-contemplation or contemplation stage. And I think still a lot of people are still there. And so it really depends on, what's your relationship like with change? For example, like I've got a friend who knows she needs to change something in her life, but she just keeps seeing a psychic because she's waiting for the psychic to tell her that, she wants a message that she knows isn't going to be delivered to her. And I've been really sitting with this for, the last couple of weeks with a couple of people that I know, is that how many messages do you need from the universe to actually take action?
Yes, this is so true. And this is it. This is like, Saturn in Aquarius has been this great destroyer and rebuilder of our lives. And especially with that square with Uranus, it's just been like everything you thought you knew, unknow it. Like it's not happening like that anymore, right? And now with this like last pass through Aquarius, how are we going to take that final change? It's not that we're never going to change again in our lives. Obviously, we are constantly evolving and changing. But whatever this was, whatever part of your chart this Saturn this Saturn was activating, that has fundamentally changed. It will never be the same. Never. Like we can't go back because of that destructive, and not necessarily destructive in a bad way. I see it as very much like a throwing it all on the fire to start again kind of thing, like a renewal type energy. But especially those of us with fixed signs, we're like clinging at the last parts, like, no, I can't do this. But at the end of the day, this is that last chance to go, okay, this part of my life had to change. It had to go through a fundamental restructure. Am I willing to accept that and move forward? Because if you don't actually work with Saturn, it's just going to come back around. And in 7 years' time, you're going to feel it again in whatever. I mean, that's a natural kind of Saturn cycle, but it may come up to you in the next, wherever Saturn's going next, it's going to continue to hit you hard if you don't work with it, participate in this Saturn transit. So I know for me, because this Saturn in Aquarius has affected so many parts of my chart, it squared my ascendant or my identity sector. It's opposed my home and family center. It has squared my relationship center, and it's activated my business, my public reputation sector. There have been so many areas of my life that have gone through this massive restructure, and I'm still learning about where I'm holding on to things as we move through this final phase. So I'd ask everybody listening to really think about, where are you still holding on to something that it's time to let go of? And You know, what parts of your life have gone through a massive change in the past year, particularly? And are you okay with allowing that process to complete? Because that's what we're doing now with this final pass through. We're just becoming complete with the experience. I'm definitely feeling complete with the experience already, but
Such a beautiful way to really, I suppose, frame up exactly what we've navigated not only over the last couple of years, but also that final push. I think that's beautiful, Sophia.
Well, this has been so much fun, and I would love to keep talking to you forever. As you know, we could talk about this for hours, but I think that that's the things to think about for the rest of the year, to really get clear with yourself about your values, about, you know, what you're leaving behind psychologically, emotionally, baggage-wise, what you're moving towards. And also, we've talked a bit about Mars and how that might play out for you, but also, you know, what parts of your life have really changed over the past year, and where do you need to complete those cycles? Because as we know, astrology is all about cycles, and it's all about, as Kristy's talked about from the beginning, participating in those cycles rather than pushing back against that energy all the time. Everything flows, particularly in your business, because this podcast is all about business. Everything flows better in your business when you work with the energy and with your own energy rather than trying to push back or act out of fear. So I hope that this little forecast episode has given you some clarity and some things to think about to move forward for the rest of 2022. Thank you so much, Kristy, for joining me, and I'm sure you will be back soon so we can jam some more on all of this.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. If you'd like to learn more about what I do, head to sophiapalace.com or follow me at Sophia Palace over on Instagram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful, and share it with a few friends. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.